Right. So we came up to this page, I believe, a while ago when I was reading the story. I had to put it away for a while because I was occupied with other things to do with this whole quarantine situation about the coronavirus. Um, has given me some time, and I believe the kind of um, situation we're stuck in is a lot like the outset of the story, and most importantly, the decisions that these characters make along the story are um, not far away from the decisions that we have to make today and in the near future when um, um, we we find our economies impacted by this pandemic. So anyway, if I want to remember exactly where we were, I think down to Mall Street. I think we came as far as people have learnt about this meteor. Am I right? So let's start from top of this page anyway. All they had to do was furnish it. They're talking about the new house that the young couple are trying to buy. All they had to do was to furnish it, and the furniture was already on order at Waston's finest upholsterer. To the rear, the study and a dining room opened onto the backyard, not huge, just a few acres, but offering the shade of two fine beech trees, a green lawn, and a flower bed where the first buds of spring were already starting to open up. Kitchen and workrooms were in the basement, in the English fashion. The second floor was just as attractive as the first. The central hallway ran between spacious rooms. Jenny could only congratulate her fiancé on his discovery of this lovely dwelling, an exceptionally good-looking species of suburban home. Mrs. Huddleston agreed with her daughter, and they definitely couldn't have found anything better in all Waston. As for Miss Lou, she chiefly left her mother, sister, and Frances to confer about wallpaper and furnishings. Like a bird fluttering around inside its cage, the girl darted into every corner of the house. She was delighted too, finding the place absolutely perfect. She repeated this assessment every time she ran to Mrs. Huddleston, Jenny, and Frances on one floor or the other. And at a point when everybody was gathered in the parlor, she announced, I've got more room picked out. Oh, have you? Frances inquired. Don't worry, I left the best one for you, the girl added. You'll be able to see the river. As for me, I'll be able to smell the garden. And what would you need the room for? Mrs. Huddleston put in. I need a place to stay, Mom, when you and Dad are traveling. But honey, you know your father hates traveling. Except into outer space, the girl shot back, her hand whooshing through the air and off into some imaginary yonder. But since he never actually goes away, Lou, it's fine, let her be, Jenny cut in. Yes, she can have a room in our house, and she can drop by any time she wants. And she's welcome to stay here, Mom, if it happens that you and Dad do have business out of town. Which was too far-fetched and possibly for Mrs. Huddleston even to contemplate. Sorry, I misread it. My English sucks anyway. Thanks for bearing with me. But, so let me just give it another try. Which was too far-fetched a possibility for Mrs. Huddleston to even contemplate. Wow, Lou said. What a view! What a gorgeous view you got to have up there. And by up there, the girl meant the top part of the house where the railing ran around the base of the roof. From that location, you could see every part of the horizon out to the nearby hills. In fact, Mrs. Huddleston, Jenny, and Frances were wise to go along with Lou, since the Wilcox subdivision is pretty elevated and their house was located at its highest point. A vast panorama was visible. You could see up and down the Potomac and even beyond the village of Steele that Miss Arcadia Walker had left behind to meet up with Seth Stanford. The whole town was on view below, with its clocks and churches, the high roofs of its public buildings and its treetops forming a vault of greenery overhead. To see all this, nosy little Miss Lou had to sweep her pocket binoculars side to side in all directions. She chattered away. There's Constitution Square, that's Moore Street. I can see our own place with our watchtower and the flag fluttering in the breeze. There's somebody out on the deck. Your dad, Frances said. He's the only one it could be, Miss Huddleston stated. Right, it's him, the girl agreed. I can make out his features. He's holding a telescope, and you'll see it'll never occur to him to aim it this way. No, it's pointed up at the sky. We aren't that high up, Dad. Over here, over here. Lou called and called as if Dr. Huddleston could ever have heard her. Besides, even if he'd been closer, wouldn't he have been too wrapped up in his work to answer? At this point, Frances joined in. If you can see your house, Lou, probably you can see my uncle's as well. Right, the girl replied. Let me give it a try. I'll see if I can get a good look at the watchtower. It's got to be over here. Hold on. Let me get it in focus. Good. There it is. Yep. There it is. Lou wasn't mistaken. It was Fawcett's house, all right. I've got it, she repeated triumphantly, as if she'd made some major scientific breakthrough that would put her name on the front page. Then, after looking at it a minute, there's somebody up in the tower. My uncle, no doubt, Frances replied. He isn't by himself. Omicron would be with him. No need to ask what they're up to, Miss Huddleston commented. Same thing as that, Jenny responded. A gloomy shadow seemed to pass over the young lady's brow. She was in constant fear that the rivalry between Fawcett and Dr. Huddleston would lead to chilly relations between the two families. But once the marriage had taken place, the young couple would be a major influence and could head off any potential conflicts between the two rivals. Francis would do his part. He would take his uncle in hand, while she would see to her father during those scientific skirmishes that were bound to come up. Their inspection over with, Lou once again said how pleased she was. Mrs. Huddleston, her two daughters, and Frances Gordon went back home to Morris Street. The next day, they would see the landlord and sign the lease, then forge ahead with the decorating and furnishing. Before long, the newlyweds would be able to move in. And thanks to all the crucial things they had to do, From choosing linens to making rounds of friends and acquaintances, the time was sure to fly during those 50 days between April 10th and May 31st. The date set for the wedding. By the way, isn't it nice that May 31st is the day of the wedding and we're heading to May in this catastrophic time? And I'm not going to tell you from now, but something's going to happen around the time that the wedding's supposed to take place. Spoiler alert. Okay, we'll be ready, you'll see, her impatient Miss Lou kept saying. And if they weren't, it wouldn't be any fault of hers, because she would be sticking her nose in everywhere. Meanwhile, Dan Fawcett and Dr. Huddleston will likewise waste no time, but with other objectives in mind. They were risking physical and mental exhaustion during those clear days and calm nights when they searched the skies for their shooting star, which persisted in not appearing above the horizon. And speaking of horizons, wasn't Washington's too restricted? Didn't they need a far better view of the heavens? If they shifted operations to some high mountaintop, couldn't they track the meteor over a much wider stretch of sky? And they wouldn't have to go very far to do this. No need to leave North America for the heart of Mexico. No reason to set up shop on the proud South American summit of Mount Chimborazo. After all, right in Virginia's neighboring states of Georgia and Alabama, didn't they Alleghenies offer mountain peaks lofty enough to improve the things for our two astronomers, forgive me. That high in the sky, nothing would be in the way, and at 5 or 6,000 feet above sea level, what a magnificent expanse of firmament their telescopes would be able to take in. And though they never put their heads together on this subject, Fawcett and Dr. Huddleston were both wondering if they not only needed a less restricted horizon, but also a place that didn't have such cloudy skies. Which, to tell the truth, is all they'd been getting for their pains. Though they'd had the benefit of mild weather and no fog, from sunrise to sunset, from dusk to dawn, there wasn't a sign of that meteor over Washington. Is it really up there? Fawcett asked after a good long spell at the eyepiece of his telescope. It's up there, Omicron replied with unflappable confidence. And well, can we see it? Because it's out of sight. Yeah, but if it is out of our sight, is it out of everybody else's? An employer and employee kept on bickering while the bloodshot eyes returned to the wearying vigils. Meanwhile, similar comments were emerging in monologue from Meanwhile, similar comments were emerging in monologue form from the lips of Dr. Huddleston, no less aggravated by his lack of success. The observatories in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati had answered their respective letters. Each answer duly noted the receipt of information regarding the appearance of a shooting star on the date of April the 2nd in northern sector of Western's horizon. Each answer added that its institution's own observations hadn't managed to confirm the existence of such a shooting star, but each promised to keep looking, and if the meteor was sighted again, Pittsburgh would inform Dean Fawcett, in Cincinnati, Dr. Stanley Huddleston immediately. Understand now that the two observatories had replied independently, neither realizing that two different amateur astronomers were involved, each of whom would be claiming he was the first for to make the discovery. But on one point, there is no doubt whatever. The watchers in those towers on Elizabeth Street and Morris Street could easily have taken a vacation from their exhausting vigils. The above cited observatories were much better equipped for this task, owning telescopes many times more powerful and precise. If the meteor wasn't just some runaway rock, if it had well defined track, and if it finally reappeared under circumstances like those in which it had already been sighted, the telescope and the binoculars in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati were sure to spot it going by. Messrs. Fawcett and Huddleston would have been far better off leaving things to the directors of those two renowned institutions. Not a chance. They were more addicted to sky watching than ever. That's because they sensed they were both chasing the same hare. Each man kept his doings to himself, each was gripped by all sorts of delusions, and neither had a moment's peace from worrying that the other would beat him to the punch. They were eating their hearts out, and for the sake of good relations between their families, you could only hope they never laid eyes on a miserable meteor again. In fact, there were now ample grounds for worrying, and worries could only get worse. Fawcett and Dr. Hudson no longer suffered in each other's homes. In the recent past, in the recent past 2 days, were not gone by without exchanging visits or inviting each other over for dinner. These days were in the recent past, those days were not gone by without their exchanging visits or inviting each other over for dinner. But these days, there were no such visits, no more invitations, which had something to do, which was something to be thankful for, because it saved them both from having to say no. For the two lovers, it was a tough state of affairs. They still saw each other every day. They still saw each other every day, and the door of the Morris Street home remained open to Francis. Something had changed, though, and it wasn't Jenny. Mrs. Huddleston showed him the same trust and friendliness, but her husband seemed distinctly uncomfortable in his presence. And when they mentioned Dean Fawcett's name in front of Dr. Huddleston, Doctor's face would turn pale and the bright red from all the animosity he felt. And in similar circumstances, Fawcett's expression would show the same regrettable signs. Mr. Huddleston tried hard to learn the reason for this new hostility between the two old friends, but her attempts got nowhere, and her husband only replied, "I'm not gonna talk about it. The way Fawcett's been behaving." Behaving how? It was impossible to coax an explanation from him. Even Lou herself, the spoiled brat who got away with everything, couldn't worm the truth out of him. She even proposed to hunt up Fawcett in his watchtower, but Francis talked her out of it, and undoubtedly she would have gotten the same sort of answer from Uncle Dean as her father had given. "I refuse to talk about it. I can't believe Huddleston's acting this way towards me." And let the record show that when old Mrs. Mitz had this and hazarded a follow-up question, Fawcett answered curtly, "None of your beeswax." Finally, however, Omicron blurted out the truth, with which Mrs. Mitz promptly relayed to Francis. The boss had discovered a fabulous shooting star, and that was a reason to think Dr. Huddleston had made the exact same discovery at the same hour on the same day. So that was the reason for his idiotically vehement feud. Um, just as Okay, that's enough. It is 20 minutes already. So catch me in the next episode. Bye bye.